Hello, welcome to Noodling with the Neurodiversity Coaching Academy. My name is Tracy Winter, and I am a co-founder of the Neurodiversity Coaching Academy, along with
Kate Arms, the other co-founder of the Neurodiversity Coaching Academy. And with us, we have our guest, Morwenna Stewart. Morwenna, do you want to introduce yourself?
Happy to. Yeah, I'm Morwenna Stewart. So I'm a neurodiversity and writing and creativity coach, trainer, speaker, all sorts of other things. And I met Tracy and Kate fairly recently at conferences, and we all hit it off. And here we are. We've got the same kind of interests in neurodiversity and all that good stuff.
Yeah.
That's me.
So our process for this Noodling with the Neurodiversity Coaching Academy is that Tracy and I are inviting people to come and talk with us about topics of their interest, asking us questions, sharing their thoughts, getting into conversation, hopefully. And so, Morwenna, do you want to kick us off with what you want us to talk about?
Yeah, well, I mean, I've got loads of neurodiversity subjects I'm really interested in. So, wind me up like a little toy and I'll just go for hours talking about stuff. But the one that's been on my mind a lot in the last few years is that we come from neurodiversity, or we have traditionally from a deficit perspective, as we all know. We all work in this area, right? But actually, maybe we could be focusing on some of the brilliance as well. And what that creativity looks like for us and how it's different and so on. And that could be in both how we use that creativity in a business sense or in a personal sense, or both. It could be absolutely anything. So I was curious what got you guys into the work that you're doing, because I think that's really creative, but also your creativity in your personal lives. So I don't know who would like to kind of go in first on that one.
go ahead, Kate.
So, I mean, I think that you really hit on something with the founding of the Neurodiversity Coaching Academy as a creative act. I love that you named that, because I do a lot of work with entrepreneurs and founders and innovators and business people who are incredibly creative. And so I think that naming that creation is creation in so many wide spheres is super, super powerful. And I think that from my perspective, it was like every other creative endeavor I have ever done, which is that I saw a lot of really cool stuff being done by a lot of people who weren't necessarily talking to each other. And I was like, you could learn from you and you could learn from you. And the easiest way to put it together is to create something new. And similarly, Tracy had the idea for a school. And so I put all of these ideas together with Tracy's desire to build a school and was like, how's that for an idea?
Awesome.
Which is claiming more credit for the school idea, I think, than is fair, Tracy. So why don't you have a shot?
I've been an ADHD coach trainer for several years, and I keep looking around, and there are very specific coaching schools for different neurotype, but not for neurodiversity as an umbrella. And I thought that was a missing link. And so I had mentioned this to Kate before, and when she said, "Hey, do you want to do this with me?" I was like, "Yes, please." And it actually has been one of the more creative things I have done in my life, because the two of us working together are like, it's cliche, but it's cliche for a reason, right? It happens all the time. Two people more than the sum of the parts. We get noodling together, just the two of us, and it just flows and sparks and runs, and we come up with what we think. And it's like the thing about creativity is it's super fun. So for neurodivergent folks, a lot of us will do the super fun thing before we'll do anything else.
Yep.
So like, it's really nice when the creative super fun thing aligns with the work that you want to be doing. So that's how it shows up in my life. I think that the creativity is in ideas. And also, Kate and I both have backgrounds as dancers. So there's a grounded bodily kind of creativity also, that I don't practice as much anymore, but is there when I need it. And I think Kate would say the same thing. So, on the personal, hey, I don't do this as a profession anymore. Part of that kind of creativity. That's where I've got. Kate, how does the dancing sort of come into your creativity? And
So the dancing is really, really interesting. So the dancing and the thinking ideas are actually sort of the two places where my creativity really expresses itself. And interestingly enough, I have aphantasia. And so aphantasia means that I don't have visual creativity. I don't have that mental imagery in my mind that is visual. In fact, if I want to be able to see things, I need to actually make them in front of me, and I need to actually build the thing to see the thing, which is really useful in terms of actually delivering a product or getting courses together or that sort of thing, is that I actually need to build it to know what it is I'm building, which is really actually a very useful part of not being able to see it in my mind. The dancing's really interesting because I was a ballet dancer as a kid, and ballet is so much discipline and so much training before you get to the creativity. The reason that ballet dancers are so skilled and so precise when they get to the creativity is how much precision they have before they get to interpretation. And I never got to interpretation. I wasn't actually good enough at it to sort of be able to use the skills for interpretation. And I got my dancing creativity back through a body of work called interplay. And interplay is a combination of very simple to explain, simple to do forms of dance storytelling and music making using the human body and improvisation, and 8 body wisdom principles. I hesitate before 8 because when I was trained, we called them 7, not 8 body wisdom principles, because there's a sense of humor in there. And this body of work gave me my sort of embodied creativity back in a real way when I studied it. And then I became the mother of 4 kids, and I didn't have time to go to those workshops and go and dance in those settings. So I started writing about parenting using the principles, and I started thinking of parenting as a way of playing in an interplayful way using the principles. And the principles are totally aligned with the ICF coaching modalities. So like all of the lines go like that. And so in a very funny way, everything I do in coaching goes back to those practices and those principles. And so there's a way in which I conceptualize everything I do as dance.
Dancing in the moment, as we sometimes say about
Really
coaching.
dancing in the moment in a very physical, embodied, literal sense. Yeah.
That's really interesting. I'm interested in what you say about how you formed your business and bring together disparate ideas. I think that sometimes I talk to clients about creativity, and as soon as you use the word, clients will say, well, I'm not creative. And what they think of creativity is painting or music or art, that kind of very obvious kind of creativity. But often it's kind of creativity in thinking and in linking ideas together and in linking people together and creating something new that may not necessarily be artistic in that kind of sense. So that's kind of what I was hearing if you mean that the business sense. Yeah, I mean, it also comes into innovation. Where do you think the kind of innovation comes from for you guys? Maybe Tracy.
I'm trying to parse the difference between creativity and innovation.
I mean, there might not be.
If there is one.
If there is one.
Right, like I would argue that there isn't one. I would argue
yeah.
that innovation is the word that people who are being creative and and think that creative is about the arts.
Exactly.
Instead,
it's two sides of the same coin, maybe. Yeah.
Well, like the way I was trying to get them into 2 boxes. It's like maybe creativity is the thing that fuels the innovation, which is sort of like the product of the creativity, but I'm not sure that's right. So how does the innovation come in? Yeah, I feel like I don't have a different answer than you answered before much.
Yeah, I mean, I think the storytelling answer is the way that we build the master classes that we've been offering.
Yes.
We get on the phone and we're like, okay, so what do we already know about this? What do we want to share about this?
And then we like babble and run out the mouth for 45 minutes.
And we yes and all over each other. Yes, that, and this, and that, and this. Yeah.
So
And-
sparking off each other.
Yeah, but then there's also times maybe later where we will challenge each other. Say, this wasn't quite right. Well, here's what I was thinking about this. And then the other will say, I agree, or now I see the point, and also, right? So like we have that, I'm really grateful we have that ability to sort of bounce. And it's not like we're yes-anding and that's what we put up, because we also are, once you've created stuff, you need to go back and form it and shape it a little bit. And so we do that. And that's, to me, part, like editing is part of creativity, right? You write and you edit, and edit is also creating, and publishing is creating it. So like that.
Yes, a number of times our sort of initial brain dump about what we want to put in this webinar is 6 hours worth of content. And we're like, okay, let's
That's not gonna work. Pull it back.
That's too much. Yeah.
So I think I was talking to somebody about creativity the other day, a neurodivergent friend, and this friend was talking about the fact that sometimes creativity comes from almost bad places or tricky places, or which is quite an interesting idea. I'm curious what you think about this, but it's trying to fix problems. So sometimes it comes from having had problems in some ways that we see a need and we go and fix it. What do you think about that? How do you think that might play out in what you do?
I think that could be true, but doesn't necessarily have to be true for creativity to present. I mean, we just kind of described how we saw a problem, really, but in terms of a gap, right, in the coaching community, that there wasn't training for people to become neurodiversity inclusive coaches. And so we created, in order to solve that, like we could put that on that line. And also, this maybe goes to your point about thinking of the problems versus the benefits versus not just being binary about it, right? That it doesn't feel heavy. It doesn't feel like there's not a panic. There's not a like rushed feeling, for me anyway, when I'm being creative, there can't be, because otherwise my brain's not relaxed enough to let the ideas flow. So that may be in a way, but I think maybe it's an instigator or a catalyst sometimes. But I tell you, when Kate and I are just yes-anding to her language, I mean, technically we're kind of solving a problem because we're still filling that gap, but it doesn't feel like we're solving a problem.
Feel like that.
It feels like we are, like, solving a problem seems tight and squishy.
Yeah.
What we do feels very light and airy.
Yeah.
What do you think, Kate?
I mean, I think I agree with you. I think that the challenge, and I think this really is one that shows up a lot for neurodivergent people, is that if the brain is in fight, flight, freeze mode, we devolve to our level of training and habit. We do all of the things we've already got the skills to do. And if we're in that mode, the creativity that comes up is about pure survival. Like, what do I already have in my repertoire that I can use to survive this moment? And that is absolutely a form of creativity. And it is constrained by what we have already got the skills to do. And so if we want to do anything else, learn new skills of any sort, we have to get out of that fight, flight, freeze mode, which is that expansive mode, that expansive, up, light, airy feeling that Tracy is describing. And I think that seeing things as problems makes it easier to fall into the old habits way of solving things, and seeing things as opportunities is an easier way to slide into the sort of more open and spacious way. I think the creative is there to begin with.
I can add, Kate, you were talking about the skills to solve these new problems, which we talk about as horizontal development, right? But I think there's also like creativity can be part of vertical development, of understanding more and of seeing more complexity and all that kind of stuff. And you absolutely can't, like, you do a little bit to it from a scared place because you usually have a dilemma that sort of like kicks it off, like you're saying. But in order for your brain to see more, like if you're scared, it closes in. If you're not scared, it opens up, right?
Opens up.
So the brain has to be in that state in order to sort of develop that way creatively.
That's interesting what you're both saying. I think I agree, and perhaps I wasn't kind of coming at it from the right explanation. But I was talking to somebody who is an artist, and so painting or music or something like that will quite often, not always, of course, come from places of things that are not going right or disappointments or whatever that might be. And I've worked with quite a lot of ND artists who are trying to sort of fix something and express something that they're struggling with and things that haven't gone right in their life. So I think maybe there is a difference between creativity in an artistic sense and innovation for ND people, because we see problems out there and we go straight into fix it mode and we want to create something amazing, and we do. But sometimes the art is more about some of the struggle. What do you think?
I would say yes, and
Fixing.
Sorry, go on, Kate.
Wait, go ahead.
Go, Tracy. This is typical, by the way. Go, Tracy.
We like this.
Yeah, just one quick thing. Like, it sounds like the artists are about expression and the innovators are about solving. I think they're different. I think we're talking about two different things happening here.
Yeah.
What were you going to say, Kate?
I was going to say it's all about play. I would say that the way that human beings are able to use their creativity to solve the hard problems without falling into the fight, flight, freeze is to bring an ethic or an attitude of play to the thing. So I actually would say that it sort of works the other way with artistry. I think that artistry is a way of playing with the challenge. It actually becomes workable because it's attacked through play. Like it's not attacked. It's actually sort of touched on and dipped into and massaged and nuanced with that attitude of play. And I would say that innovation in the sort of problem solving space is very, very similar. When I go into a tech company and I'm working with people who are building new things to solve problems, if the company comes at it from a we're here to solve problems perspective and is driving straight towards the problem solution thing, the solution is going to be a repetition of what's already been done. And it's not going to be innovative. It's going to be new, because it's going to be a new application of old skills to the situation. But if the organization comes with an attitude of play in the development process, they might actually create something new in the process of trying to solve the problem. And so I would actually say that the playfulness is a huge thing.
It's vital. That's really interesting, the idea of play, and I kind of having lots of thoughts about that, because I used to read a lot of psychologists who wrote about play when I was a kid and how important it is, and the serious business of play kind of thing, which takes the fun out of it a little bit, but you kind of get where I'm going with it. But that how important that is. And I think what is it about neurodivergent people that we are quite good at that? Because it's the World Economic Forum says that the top skills that we need, and I keep referring to this as blah blah blah, all these different skills, but innovation and creativity, and those are the ones that people need. Why are they so important, and why is it that ND people, we tend to have them in abundance? What do you think?
Go ahead, Kate. I've been answering all the whole time, the first time.
Go ahead.
I mean, I think that the thing is that creativity and innovation come from seeing things differently. And so there's, if you see things differently, you see that if you're wired differently, you see things differently. And I think that is very, very clear.
Yeah. And why is it important? I mean, like nothing gets done without, there's no progress without innovation, right?
Yeah.
Let alone the fact that, the most advanced civilizations have art forms. And the value of that in a different kind of way than we value like the next iPhone, right? But both require creativity and innovation to solve the big problems. We haven't solved all of them yet, but we keep making progress, I think, I hope.
Yeah,
chipping away at it.
absolutely. But it's interesting, and the idea of, and I think what we're sort of saying is that we need neurodivergent minds because we think differently and so on, which is kind of, you know, like neurodiversity 101, which we all know, right? But I guess I'm wondering, when you look at some stereotypical ideas of neurodivergent play as children, we might see that through a deficit lens, and we might see that as a kind of a, you know, playing the wrong way. So maybe that is partly why we are so valuable in terms of how we play and how we innovate and how we are creative, because our play is different, the way we even approach play. Am I getting a bit meta there?
Yeah. Go ahead, Tracy.
Oh, this is what we do with each other too. What's coming to mind right now is the work I do with my coaching clients in helping them sort of sift through those layers of shame about not being able to play properly when they were a kid, or the reflections that they got, you know, of that, or similar things. And sometimes that creativity and innovation isn't in evidence as much because they have tried to bury that way of thinking and be in line with people. And so like some of it is sort of a reclaiming, at which point their own ideas about how to move forward just skyrocket. So I think you're onto something about that being that deficit of they're not playing properly, or they're not playing at the right age, the right things, or whatever. You know, that's the kind of different thinking that leads us to different solutions later. And you know, just like we used to try to train left-handers to be right-handed, that sort of thing is still happening in neurodiversity. So that's my first.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that the challenge is like the right way kind of thing, that thinking is the challenge. There's some reasonably convincing, at least to my mind, evidence that in order for societies to be stable, about 80% of the population needs to be devoted to maintaining the status quo, and about 20% needs to be devoted to adapting to changing circumstances. And that balance seems to create a socially adaptable
A critical mass of,
and that more than that being sort of divergent thinkers actually destabilizes the society as a whole, and that fewer than that actually reduces adaptability. And so this tension between looking at what's really here now and changing what used to be to deal with what's here now, plus looking forward, that's an inherent tension that we need as a collective. And so there's, and that's an inherently creative tension, because creativity often happens in the tension. And so one of the things that I find really interesting about trying to be neurodiversity inclusive, as opposed to being neurodivergent supportive, which is what a lot of the traditions that Tracy comes out of in terms of coaching, ADHD coaching, are often like neurodivergent supportive. Whereas neurodiversity inclusive is actually looking at how do we support the fact that there's got to be this split, because it is tension producing. And because human beings learn through play, the 20% that are like, what is here now and what can I do with what is here now, play in a way that is like, okay, this data in front of me, I want to play with this, whether it is Lego pieces or jigsaw puzzle pieces or train timetables or lipstick colors. And then the 80% are playing to like, what is the status quo? How do I learn how to be what is? How do I learn what the society's norms are? So the play looks very different.
So it doesn't have to necessarily be the new play. It can be playing with what is now. in a sense. Yeah. What are you going to
thing
say,
that kept
Tracy?
running
Go
through
on.
my mind as you were talking about that, Kate, was the statistic. And the statistic that's thrown around, it may or may not be accurate. There's some little trouble with the research there. But the CDC talks about 15 to 20% of the population being neurodivergent.
Indeed.
So like that 80-20
Kind of
coincidence
maps.
could be. I mean, it's an interesting coincidence.
Yeah, and the highly sensitive person material, which there's some pretty clear connections between highly sensitive persons and ADHD and autism in there. Elaine Aaron typically saying 20% of the population. The people who are in the giftedness space who look at multiple strands of giftedness and multiple types of giftedness usually end up looking at about 20% of the population being like, so there seems to be something about this. Yeah.
That's really interesting about the population stuff. I'm wondering about kind of coming back to the personal a little bit again, in a sense, and thinking about how we use our own creativity. So how we kind of sometimes adapt and join up different things. A friend of mine used to call it dancing about architecture, but it's joining up different things that don't necessarily seem to go together. And you know, you guys have brought dance and the arts and coaching and training and all those kinds of things together. So how else do you think you kind of use your creativity? I know for me it's music is a big one. I play guitar, I crochet, I need to make things. How do we use that? How do we tap into that? Tracy, what do you do?
My answer is not enough. It does not be how, but not enough. I'm working on it. I crochet. I like to crochet. I say I crochet in the present tense, except I have this project I've worked on for years that I haven't picked up in the last year and a half because I got stuck and I got mad and it's just sitting there. And it's on my little spindles, and so I can't start anything else. It's a whole lot of thing. And I don't know, like, it's creative in that I am creating this material thing, and it's really satisfying to create something like that. But also I follow a pattern, which I like doing because I like how things fit in boxes sometimes. I don't like when ideas fit in boxes, but I like it when like smaller parts of my life do that. So it serves kind of different pieces of me in that way. I think most of my creativity nowadays is going into my work. My work, going into work adjacent things like I'm past president of ICF Austin, so coming up with new ways of doing things and new innovations for that we haven't tried, along with this incredible board that's on. What I'm noticing is a lot of my creativity, despite being an introvert, is in connection and in community.
That's a great.
There was somebody and having spark in life.
Yeah, I think I'm the same, and in that I sort of seem to be working towards doing more live events and things like that at the moment, and it just seems to be kind of drawing people in and making links with people, and that seems to be very creative to me, to link people up, and it sparks new ideas. Yeah, which I really love. Yeah, anything from you on that, Kate?
Yeah, so many things. I mean, I think that this piece about creating community and creating live events, I think is really interesting because we live in what is commonly called a very isolated world and a very lonely world. And so I think
also a global world, contradictory.
Right? Yeah. And I think that actually there are a lot of people right now whose creativity is going towards building community in a variety of different ways, because that's what we do as human beings. When we see a need and we have some skills, we apply them. And so I think that, so firstly, like, I love that I'm seeing this in so many different places, because there's all this, if it bleeds, it leads. So the media is full of like, oh my God, we're such a lonely community. And I look out in the real world and I'm like, I am surrounded by people who are trying to, who are playing with their own lives in ways to try and build community in the ways that they can in their spaces. And so I think that's one of the ways that creativity works, is that it's very localized, embodied in a sort of what is my possible thing in a lot of ways. Tracy, your thing about like making things, but it shifting to making work is really fascinating because I used to make art. I used to write poetry. I used to do a lot of theater. I have written stories. I've made books. The things used to be really, really important. Interplay taught me to make ephemeral things. We would do a form, we do a dance, we call it a thing. And that started to really allow me to get some of the satisfaction of making a thing from making an experience. So my thing making is very much associated with making my house beautiful and my garden beautiful and my garden eco-friendly in the ways I want it to be and that sort of thing. So that's my thingness right now. And my idea stuff is absolutely at work.
That's really nice. I like your thinking from both of you on that. It's not just the tangible things, but the creativity is in all sorts of different ways, and thinking of it as creating a thing. I mean, I used to struggle when I was in work and I was doing jobs that I didn't particularly enjoy, and people would say, "What do you do?" And I'd say, "Oh, well, I kind of create a spreadsheet or I create a Word document." Do you know what I mean? It doesn't feel very creative, but what is creativity? It's, I don't know. Sometimes in coaching, it's helping a client to get from A to B, and that's creative. That's creative as hell.
Yeah.
Well, and in coaching, we create spaces too,
Yeah.
right? Talk about ephemeral. But one of the things that we do is create space for our clients to be whatever they need to be in each moment. While being, sort of being held or having a safety net or like, we hope that we're creating safe spaces. We don't know unless our clients tell us. But that's one of our sort of mandates from our core competencies, right? Is creating trust and safety. And so right there's a creating.
Yeah. And in team coaching, you're creating cultures.
Yeah.
The challenge that you were alluding to, Morwenna, I see all the time in my work with engineering leaders, because engineering leaders come up from very tangible work. Even if it's in code, it's, I write this sentence and this action now happens as a result of I wrote this line of code. And the working with new managers or people who are moving to even higher levels of abstraction as they get to be responsible for more and more of an organization's impact, about how do you judge success? How do you judge what you are making? How do you sort of get that sense of satisfaction from making that? You have to shift from making things to making experiences, from making things to making progress. And that's a very difficult change for a lot of people, but it's all creative.
Yeah, it is all creative. But I wonder it's a particularly ND thing. I don't know. Maybe it was just because I had some jobs that I hated, but making or not making anything. And sometimes we work in a lot of service industries. In the UK, we've moved from making, manufacturing has just kind of died. And we work in services and products and not necessarily tangible things. Do you think we kind of feel less creative, less, as you say, how do you create, as a manager, you go from doing the doing to doing the managing of the people doing the doing, but you're not creating something. So what does creative management look like?
So that's where you make the shift. Sorry, Tracy.
No.
That's where you make the shift from creating a product to creating a business, to creating a culture, to creating a community, to creating a process
Yes.
of problem solution.
Yeah. It's creating people and feelings and culture and those things that are intangible but incredibly powerful in themselves. Yeah. You're going to say something, Tracy?
I was mostly going to say what she said, but also like facilitating the creativity of others, right? As you go higher in leadership, the more you are facilitating the work of others, which would be the creativity of others, and facilitating their growth, right? So you're creating spaces for growth, you're creating opportunities for movement, all of that kind of stuff. But you're right that it's not a thing in traditional sense, a object that you can point to or result you can point to until you do it for a while, and then you can, like, you watch the people right? And the leaders that I enjoy, the leaders that have been doing it for a while, and I enjoy, are like, that's the thing that excites them most, is how they create space for their people, how they create their culture, how they watch people pass them up, you know.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's a much more artistic form of creation, actually, in a lot of businesses.
Good points. Good points. And I'm wondering about how different, because I think sometimes we've been talking about things like management and creativity generally, sort of coming back to neurodiversity. So how one of my theories is that a lot of ND coaching is kind of helping people to get from really struggling to kind of like a baseline of functioning or whatever, or reclaiming their self-esteem or whatever it might be. But there are people going up through the ranks, through management, through leadership. How do we support ND managers and leaders? Because at the moment it feels like the expectation is that people will be not at entry level, but not getting to those leadership places. So how do we support that in creative ways? Not a broad question.
One of the things that I see over and over from people who are not yet in leadership positions is that they are having to prove themselves by doing things that are contrary to their natural way of working. Managing the details, making sure things happen, coordinating, nothing creative, nothing strategic, just all of these
Operational.
minutia. And there are plenty of people who love to play in the minutia and deal with it and do a great job with it, and that's awesome. But like it's almost like you can't get to the stuff that our brains do well until you do the stuff that other people's brains do well, and that's not the case in the opposite direction. So one of the ways that we could be supporting folks is by creating the accommodations there, or pairing people up, so the people who are great at the minutia and follow through are paired with the people who are great at the strategy and maybe a little more creativity than the folks. There's creative ways to deal with the minutia too, right? But like what kinds of creativity are each bringing? So you have complementary work going on. So I think if more attention were paid to that, like how can we bring people's talents together in a mix that helps everybody and helps everybody live in their strengths, we'd see a whole different thing. But this thing about, no, you got to do you got to do the grunt work, you got to put in time, all that, before you can do the big thinking, and we don't know how not to do the big thinking a lot of this. So that's the first thing that comes to my mind. How about you, Kate?
Yeah, I think that one of the things that we can really do is help people with the skills to navigate the bit of salesmanship that has to come with selling. I have transferable skills, with selling, and then the courage to get off the traditional career ladder, to say, look at the situation and go, okay, the path up in this organization looks like this, and this is the work that you're going to need to do that. On the other hand, if you sort of shift this way, do this other thing, get this other skill set, some other sort of qualification, and come in at a higher level back into sort of the same industry, you can actually do some salesmanship there. It's difficult and it takes a lot of courage. And so one of the things that we as coaches can do is really help our clients navigate that. The other piece of it that I see is that people who do manage to sort of successfully navigate that ascension through managing those details often actually have lost touch with their genius as they go up. And what they've lost touch with is also their joy. And so if we find people who are at that place, often if we can get them to tap into their joy, it unlocks what actually makes them good at the new level professionally. So I think there are lots of pieces, and we have to look at what's the real challenge and what do we have access to in terms of leverage, in terms of creating spaces and unlocking playfulness around what's really going on.
Let me mention too the skills Kate's talking about. I think this idea of community creativity together comes into play, because one of the other ways that we can support our clients is by helping them learn how to make connections and talk to people and get themselves known, right? So people know beyond the paper who they are and what they do and what they come with. Because it can be hard to describe for people who, have a brain that works slightly differently, to describe that to someone who, doesn't. There's just a communication barrier at times. So like, if get more people to get to know you as a person, as a human, and see, wait a second, that person's got great ideas. Why are they down here in data entry or whatever? And sometimes our clients are reticent to do that because they've gotten negative reflections over the time that they've been in work or they've been in school. And so sort of, whatever we need to do for them to feel comfortable reaching out to somebody and saying, hey, you're just something interesting, should I have a coffee with me? Whatever that looks like. So that just came to mind while he was talking.
Yeah, absolutely. Some really good points. Yeah.
Yeah. The other piece in there is that collaborating with people who are in early childhood education and in elementary school curriculum planning and that sort of thing, actually like seeing them as our allies because neurodiversity inclusiveness in the early years prevents a lot of the trauma that ends up really getting in the way. Yeah.
So we're coming to the end of our time. Morwenna, like, what's on the table that you still would like to ask about?
I mean, probably a million things, but
Of course.
I sometimes wonder how we can, and thinking about community, and I've been thinking about this for a while, and this is probably just one to leave us with, is to think about how we can create better community among ND coaches and professionals, because I don't know that we have as much community as would be helpful. And I sometimes think we're working in silos or doing similar things and whatever, we could learn from each other. So I'm curious about that. And if you have any thoughts about that, that's kind of it.
I mean, obviously my thought is come to the Neurodiversity Coaching Academy. We're forming a little community of people who are regulars and they've got to know each other outside of classes and are supporting each other.
Brilliant.
Shameless plug.
Brilliant. Like it. I like the plug. Well, thank you so much for inviting me in to do this today. I've really enjoyed it. I love talking about neurodiversity, creativity, love talking with you guys about anything. We could talk about, paint drying on the wall and make it interesting. I know we could. So that's who we are.
Creativity, which picture
that's creativity. That's us.
You know.
Awesome.
Thank you so much for coming.
So much.
Thank you. You're welcome.